another science lesson involving weather and climate. And this is the second part of lesson 7. So we're going to think about the reading and writing that we did. Really, we did more reading and writing. We did it as part of an Ed Puzzle video. And in there, we look for patterns that were things that we see over and over again. And if we look at the line plot for where the boy lives, this is this part here. I'll kind of zoom in a little bit. We think about it, we see that what we end up finding is that the temperatures are going to be similar for most of that particular month. They're in a particular frame between here, between 77 and 85. They're not scattered all over. They're really in just a very consistent area. Similarly, same thing with what the cousin has here between 65 degrees and 73, right? Remember, they were at the other end of that line plot, okay? So, don't want that one here. Sorry about that. Go back a bit, go here. So if you look at the line plot for where the cousin lives, the temperatures are also similar for every day in May, right? That's what we just kind of identified. And one way to describe a temperature pattern is to give the range, okay? And often here we might see some outliers. We've kind of talked about the idea that sometimes we might have a day that's really, really cold, but for the most part, they're going to stay in a similar range. And here they stay between 77 and 85 degrees, okay? And the range of the boy's cousin is the temperature range was between 65 and 73. Okay. And this describes the temperature pattern in May at his cousin's house. This idea of a range is the span between the lowest and highest numbers in a group. Okay. So when we talk about a range, we're talking about the lowest and highest. It's also, if you think about the word range, we also use it when we talk about animals, where they go to, the furthest area that they go to, down to another part. So they might range from the northern part of Washington to the southern part of Oregon, right? That might be their range. Here we're using it with data, with numbers, and in this case, we're talking about the span between the high and the low numbers, okay? So, and we figured out a new concept. Temperature data for 1 month can be described as that range of daily high temperatures over the whole month, all right? So looking at the whole month, where's the high and the low, right? And the boy in the book recorded data about precipitation. What kind of precipitation did he record? If I were to look back at it, what type of precipitation did he record? That's right. He looked over here and he was recording rainfall, right? How much rainfall there was. Not snow, because it was May. Wasn't doing hail or sleet. He was talking about rainfall, right? What does the table tell us about rainfall in May? So if I were to zoom in here a little bit, kind of zoom in here, what does that tell us? What can I see here? Can I find any patterns in here? 105 millimeters. I got a bunch of zeros in here. Got one that's really high, a couple that are a little higher, three that are double digits, a couple others though, and then we get ourselves all the way up here to 105. What does that tell us about the rainfall in May? You might be thinking to yourself that here that it tells us that it rains quite a bit, or you might be thinking that to yourself that it has rain, but it also has days that it's not. So let's go dig a little bit deeper into this. The boy did not use a line plot to organize his rainfall data. What did he do with the data? Like how did he organize it? Why did he do this? Well, when we're comparing the rainfall data for the boys' location, right, what we end up doing here is we kind of add them all together. We use the totals from two different places. We're thinking about the total over a particular amount of time because really it's not about whether it rains every single day or just a little bit here and there. We're looking at the total amount that happens. And that's generally how we go about comparing the rainfall data for a particular place. All right. What do you notice here when you compare these two sets of data? He's got for his, it's 105 millimeters, and the cousin, it's 56. What do you notice here when you compare these two? I mean, it's absolutely right. You're probably thinking to yourself, yeah, where he lives gets twice as much rain as it does, or almost twice as much as the cousin. He gets way more rain comparatively. That's absolutely right because we can look at the two totals. And to collect rainfall data for a month, the boy added each day's amount. Then he created a total for the whole month. So he did create a table here, but then he ended up using that total there at the bottom. It's hard to think about 31 different numbers at the same time. The boy decided to use the total rainfall for the month to represent the data. If I go back to this here and take a look at it, I would not want to put this in a line plot. Why wouldn't I want to put this into a line plot? You might think to yourself that you don't want a line plot because you'd have all the way from 0 all the way to 35. So it's a really giant span. Not only that, there are way more zeros than there are of any other number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 in just the second half of the month. So I'd have this all these x's for 0, which doesn't really tell us to tell the full story. And then I have one x for 35 and one for 12. In fact, it doesn't really look like any of the data pieces repeat at all. So when I look at them, I'd be a little bit stumped as to how to make sense of it. So using it and adding a total would make the most sense here. Okay. So let's keep on going a little bit further. All right. So because he used totals to represent the data, the BOIC is better able to easily compare the data across these two different places, right? And here we figured out this other concept that precipitation data for 1 month can be described as the total precipitation over the whole month, right? We don't want to have that line plot with 10 different X's for 0 and then one scattered about for each of them because it doesn't really tell us quite the same story as it does with temperature, all right? And then using that total rainfall for the month made it easier to compare. And to compare weather in different places, meteorologists report total rainfall for a month by adding up the daily rainfall, and they use line plots for a temperature range for the month. And we're going to learn more about these in the next lesson. Okay, good work today.